MMA Rants and Raves, George St-Pierre versus Michael Bisping for the UFC Middleweight Championship of the World. Guys, let's talk about this fight. Well, not that long ago, I did a vlog about what is GSP's legacy. I put a link in the video's description so you could see that. When I did it, I just had this feeling that this may have not been the last that we've seen of GSP. And here we are, he's back, and he's back at middleweight. Now, why middleweight? I'm thinking, hey, to pick up a belt in two different weight classes, not that many fighters have done it. And I don't think any fighter has ever picked up the belt at welterweight and middleweight. So this can be making history for GSP once again, if he can win this fight. Now, there was talk of GSP fighting at middleweight during his career. The big super fight that people spoke about for a very long time was, of course, against Anderson Silva. The fight never materialized. Now keep in mind, even at welterweight, GSP is not a big guy. He probably fills out his build as much as possible to be the best it can be, the strongest it can be, and the most conditioned it can be. But he does have a 5'10" frame. You have guys like Damian Maia fighting at welterweight. My goodness. There are very big guys in this division. If you look at GSP, he's faced guys like Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz. These guys are 6 feet, over 6 feet, big guys. And it didn't matter who GSP faced. He was able to win throughout his title defending career for a very long time. And this is why he is the greatest pound for pound fighter in UFC history. Because when you say pound for pound, it means relative to his size. He had to face guys that were bigger than he was. And let me tell you something, there was no tougher division than the welterweight division when he fought. And even now, it's arguably the toughest division in the UFC. Look who's fighting in that division. It's incredible. It's so talented, so stacked. Now, he's facing a guy who actually has things in common with him in Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping is a very well-conditioned athlete. He has great cardio. He is a volume puncher. He's not a guy that finishes a lot of fights. He generally uses his volume and he wears his opponents out. He also is a good wrestler, a good boxer. So these guys do have something in common. However, there's some differences. Bisping is a bigger guy. He's taller, he's bigger. This is a guy who used to fight at light heavyweight, and he has a longer reach. Now, as far as GSP's quicker, and he's going to be even quicker now that he's fighting at middleweight. Now, of course, it's been so long since he's fought. The question is, what are we going to see? Is he the same? How much has he been training? Has he been involved? Has he been sparring? I really don't know what he's been doing, but getting in there and doing the real thing and fighting, it's a different ballgame. And he hasn't done that in quite a while. The question is, will he be able to take Bisping down? It's not just his size. Bisping himself is a good wrestler, and his takedown defense is pretty good. And that's a very important thing to look at. When GSP has problems taking guys down, the plan B doesn't always go too well for him. If you look at the fight against Johnny Hendricks, it was a very tough fight for him because he was having a very hard time getting Hendricks down. Now, if he has a very hard time getting Bisping down, he may be forced to strike with him. Now, keep in mind, Hendricks, when he was fighting during the prime of his career at welterweight, he had crushing explosive power. Bisping is a volume guy. He had a finish recently, and he's finished fights in the past, but most of his victories came by decision and, using his volume. So if he's forced to stand with Bisping, it could be interesting, because then you have two guys that are standing with each other, and basically it's going to be size versus speed. And GSP is the quicker fighter. If you watch both fighters, you can see that. Now, as far as who has a better chin, well, both guys can take a punch, but I might have to go with Bisping here. The fact that he was able to take that abuse from a guy like Dan Henderson, and then beforehand, when he fought Anderson Silva, that is a tough fight, and he took some hard shots, and he was able to continue to fight. So he's a very tough guy. So you might have to give him the advantage there, although GSP is pretty tough himself. It's going to be a very interesting fight. I mean, if it wasn't Anderson Silva, the super fight that people have been talking about for years, right? Then it's going to be Michael Bisping, who happens to be the champion, and he's a fantastic fighter. The thing is, we know a lot about Michael Bisping. We don't know much about GSP because he's been out too long, and he's never fought at middleweight. And I think he mentioned himself that once he goes to a certain weight class, he doesn't want to cut again. It's not healthy. He's very, very disciplined. He takes care of himself. He's very cerebral. He's probably one of the most mistake-free fighters I've ever seen. I mean, this guy, he reads his opponent very well. He makes them miss. He's in and out. The way he fights with his boxing, he's so good with the jab, and he uses those Superman punches where he just taps his opponent and pops back out again. Keep in mind, too, GSP throws a lot of leg kicks than Bisping, so you may be looking at a more well-rounded striker in GSP. So I'm going to go to prediction here. I got George St-Pierre to win this fight. I would like to know what you think about the fight. Please leave your comments, please subscribe, please like up this video, and thank you for tuning in.